So the devs released another set of Q&A responses in anticipation for the early access release. Hi, I'm Johnny Lockjaw, and let's talk about it. For those of you who have seen my other QA recaps, this is going to be pretty standard, but for those of you who are new, we're going to go over some gameplay stuff. How do the hunter-killers work? That is a very good question that somebody asked. So it's been confirmed that the hunter-killers spawn in based off of a couple of factors. It's going to be an amalgamation of the amount of time that you've been in a raid, the quality of the loot that you have, and sometimes the quantity of the loot that you have. Apparently it's going to mix and match a couple of those things. What it is that was said is not specific, so they didn't give us any number values for anything. Suffice it to say that apparently it's going to be something that is discoverable, but not predictable. I'm going to be perfectly honest here about this. I don't really like the idea of it being tied to time at all in terms of the amount of time that you're in a raid. One of the things about Foreverwinter that I really like is the ability to sit around and just watch what's happening from battle to battle. And I feel like if there's a time aspect to what causes the hunter-killers to spawn in, it kind of ruins that aspect, especially when you consider in the past QAs and through my beta test gameplay, there was no time limit in terms of how long you can stay on a map. And that was one of the coolest things about the game to me, is that you could just sit around and watch and look and sometimes loot stuff, or be able to loot stuff after you've seen an entire battle go down, and then you could scavenge for parts. But if part of the equation that brings hunter-killers in is the amount of time that you've been in a raid, then that kind of defeats that purpose, and that kind of stinks. We'll have to see where that goes from now, and obviously this is early access, so there's probably some push and pull in terms of how hardcore they want it to be. So obviously we'll see how things go. Somebody else asked if we could order our AI teammates to loot bodies and actually carry that loot for us. Again, if you've watched my other QA recaps, the basic blanket answer is that it's not implemented now, and it might be implemented later. It's definitely not off the table. And again, that's fine. It's early access. We'll see how that goes. They did mention that there is the pack mule in the game, which is basically just a big robot that carries around the loot that you have. But you can't order it to loot things. You have to loot the things and then put it into the pack mule. After that, somebody asked if early access progression will be wiped upon full game release. And honestly, good news here. They don't plan on it, and they basically gave a resounding no. Ultimately, it's kind of hard to say right now, but barring massive systemic changes, it doesn't seem like that's actually on the table. The only thing that I can think of that would really have that happen is massive retooling for what it is that the players' systems actually are. Even then, it doesn't even sound like they're going to have a wipe specifically for that. It just sounds like they're going to kind of try to move things around to fit what it is that you already had. Either way, and this might need to be a question that has to be asked for a future QA video, but there probably will be ways to self-wipe in case you needed or wanted to do that for any given reason. People do that with these extraction shooters a lot, where they self-wipe just to have a different experience, or a self-challenge run to see if they can complete the game more or less on a certain rule set for themselves. So I can see that definitely being something that's in the game at some point. Someone asked, will the game feature basically an endless war, or will there be things that happen that kind of change the circumstances a little bit? The answer is kind of nuanced. Apparently there's already remnants of the system that they had in play early on. This system basically acted as a tug-of-war between the different factions that were at play along the different maps. To make it simple, they want that sort of system in the game. Because they anticipate a bunch of the players to be offline exclusive, they think it's going to be really challenging to figure out where the actual war fronts should be. They did want to make it known, though, that they might tool around with different timers that set specific parameters for what units are in what different maps, so that's kind of neat. But again, a lot of that stuff is sort of in the prototype and ideation stages, so we'll see how that goes. I like the idea of a shifting map. It'll be kind of interesting to see different units populate different maps at different times. I know that during the beta, there were 2 maps, and the units were pretty stagnant for who it is that was actually on there. So again, we'll see how things shift and change depending on what maps we have access to, on top of what the units on those maps actually are. And after that, let's move on to some lore stuff. And because a lot of the lore in this game ties around the different AIs that are in it, somebody asked if the AIs are sentient. So far, it's confirmed that the playable character Gunhead is intelligent, but not sapient. I think this contrasts with the answer for Toothy, who is definitely just a rogue AI, and from how I understood the answer, I think that he is actually sentient, but he's just going crazy and he will let you know it. I think that kind of goes without saying, though. He eats people for biofuel. Additionally, somebody asked if there's going to be a codex or a journal to track different enemies. Again, they're talking about it internally, and they need to build it if there's going to be something in-game for you to view. At the very least, there should be something like that in the art book that they end up selling. When that happens is obviously up in the air. I will let you know if I hear a specific date from anybody. For now, I think you might need to look into the wiki that they're generating. I would get into the Discord to figure out information on that. Someone else asked if there was going to be different lootable logbooks or data pads that kind of just give lore to players. And some folks have already reached out to see if they can put their Foreverwinter fanfic in the game already. This is also a spoiler. They're apparently going to be adding different NPCs into the innards that you can interact with and talk to get war stories from. Obviously, that's super interesting, and I can't wait to see where they go with that. One thing about lore in games like that is obviously it's super cool when you hear it and learn it the first time, but unless you're somebody that really likes to dive deep into stuff and just read the same thing over and over again or relive the same conversations over and over again, I can't see that really being enough. That was it for the lore stuff for this week, so let's move on to some technical questions. A really good thing to have been addressed. Somebody asked what they were going to do about griefers. So the short of it, for those of you who don't know, is there is going to be friendly fire between the different scabs. So say if you have a public lobby and somebody joins it and griefs you by friendly firing you to death, that is going to be something that's addressed. So the main penalty they're implementing is if you do this as a player, you will lose a ton of scav rep. What it is that that'll do, I'm uncertain, but they did mention that it'll negatively impact questing and shopping. So hopefully that's a big enough deterrent to prevent stuff like that. Obviously, some people suck, and it won't be a complete deterrent to actual griefing. So what it is that they said is if you get a bad egg, basically just remove them from the lobby and make it so they can't keep joining by turning it into a private or friends only game. In light of the water death stuff, somebody asked if you could share water with your friends who might be experiencing it soon, and they said yes. However, it comes with a couple caveats. The main one being is they needed to make it clear that the person has to be online for you to be able to do it. Realistically, the examples they gave basically aren't giving your friends water in the way that I think the question was asking. They mentioned that you can hand them the water physically, I think in levels, by just giving them the barrel. Additionally, they mentioned you can put water in the donation box and do it that way as well. I think what this question was trying to get at, which is why they sort of mentioned that you had to be online, was if you could donate to your friends who were about to experience water death but couldn't actually get on to do anything about it. According to the most recent content creators who had access to the game early, the water death timer is up to 80 days. Now, I kind of thought that the community was overblowing the whole water death thing when it was 30 days, but if it's 80 days, I don't think anybody really has anything to say. It's not to say that I don't think that those criticisms are not valid, because I do think that they are. There's a lot of questions going around about what the state of the build is that the content creators had access to that had recently posted a ton of content for this game. One of the questions asked that directly. Now, there's some good news here. This was apparently not the most recent build, so what technical issues you saw and what some of the gameplay stuff that you saw, they wanted to make it clear that it's not to say that they think that it's in a perfect state that doesn't need any work, but a lot of stuff has already changed from what that build was, and it wasn't even the most recent build from that point on. With that being said, they want to make it clear that you do have the ability to demo the game in October when that releases. I would honestly just wait. On top of that, this is also an early access game, and with this dev team, I kind of trust them to be able to improve the game as long as there's support for it. Obviously, that kind of means that they have to sell us something to be able to support themselves financially so that they can do that, which is what early access is for. Or at least I guess ideally that's what early access is for, so I trust them at this point. They haven't broken that trust up to this point, so I have no reason to think otherwise. Also, for people who frequent the Discord, they teased that the Euruscan commander is going to be kind of cool. I don't know what it is that that'll entail. They said that that guy's got some badass animations coming, so we'll hope that that dude's as cool a mini-boss as they want him to be. But with all those technical questions out of the way, let's get on to some planned content. Somebody asked if there's going to be some customization options for the innards. This is kind of a brand new thing. There wasn't any customization for the beta. Apparently, there's already some milestone-based cosmetics that exist. I don't know what it is that those numbers are that you have to hit for any specific things, but it's really cool that that's in there, so that's kind of neat to see. Somebody else asked if there was going to be some type of armor system for the scabs. This was an old system that they sort of had different prototypes for. It initially started as a customizable plate carrier where you could put different pieces at different points. This wasn't fully fleshed out, and they realized that it wasn't something that they actually needed systemically for the game to operate before they could put the game out. I think they rightfully chose to sort of abandon this, at least for now. It's definitely not a priority to greenlight this into early access. It'll be kind of neat to see where that goes and what state that it ends up being in, but you know, we'll have to wait, obviously. After that, somebody asked if there will be oil in this game. This might end up actually being something sort of significant. I felt like it might have just been a one-off funny question, but apparently there are systems that they have prototypes for, maybe, and there's definitely ideation stages for things that require fuel. What that is, I have no idea, and they didn't say. I think more resource management for this game is interesting. Obviously, there's already the water component that you have to worry about. I don't know what it is that they'd be able to say you need fuel for, other than maybe electricity. I don't really know what's going on with that. There is power already, so I'm not 100%. Again, we'll have to wait and see what changes are to come for that. That was actually it for planned content, so let's move on to some miscellaneous stuff. Somebody seriously asked if there were any plans to add somebody legitimately asked if you could pilot cyborgs in a sort of robot boxing thing, but because that sounded like a really cool idea that is nowhere close to being anything that's actually in the game, definitely something to consider. The Foreverwinter is kind of in a neat spot where nothing's truly off the table, and if they get the funding and support that they need to actually get the game in a state that they want it to be in, they might look into implementing something at least kind of like that. Other than it being kind of cool, I don't know why it would be in the game, but obviously, rule of cool kind of plays out for stuff like this. So put the robot boxing in the game, or else. Or something. Who knows what's going to happen with that. We'll have to wait and see, I suppose. After that, a kind of really cool thing. Somebody asked what upcoming games the devs are kind of looking forward to that aren't the Foreverwinter. I'm just going to list the games that they mentioned, and you can watch the video for their responses more directly on why they were thinking these things. But they mentioned Beautiful Light, State of Decay, Dwarf Strategy, Slay the Spire 2, and I think I heard Psychosis, but I'm not 100%. Not to blame me being hard of hearing, but I am hard of hearing, so I couldn't actually hear what the title of the game was, but they did seem kind of excited over that one. Also, just kind of a quick shout out for Riloe's Beautiful Light video that was mentioned. I will link that in the description below. And after that, the closing statement kind of is sort of encapsulating in the entire game right now. They do recognize the giant milestone that they've achieved in greenlighting early access. They did want to make sure that people knew that they understood that this wasn't necessarily the finish line, but that it was basically the beginning of a brand new experience for them. Hopefully the hard work has paid off. Obviously, I think we've already figured out that I'm going to support their vision. I think that they can perfect the game that they want, and I think that the game that they want is something that we also would like. Hopefully that ends up being the case. I obviously can't tell right now what it is that I've played from the beta. I enjoyed very much. I'm hoping that more improvements over time make that experience more enjoyable. We obviously get to see very shortly how that's going to happen. Early access is literally right around the corner, so I wasn't really prepared to make this video today, but here we are. In that light, if you've made it this far, I genuinely appreciate you. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked what you saw, please don't be afraid to like, comment, follow, and subscribe. I would genuinely appreciate it. Let me know any questions that you might have in the comments, and I can try to figure those answers out for you. And as always, do me a favor, please don't die. I will see you in the next one.